Welcome to True Crime Talks. Today, Amy takes us on a journey into the sinister world of Charles Sobhraj, a notorious serial killer, fraudster, and thief. Prepare for the shocking revelations and the spine-tingling discussion. But hold on tight till the end, because we have a surprising update that will leave you stunned. So now, let's begin.
To start off, Charles Sobhraj is a serial killer that primarily got his victims on the hippie trail from tourists that were traveling the hippie trail, which is I have a map of the hippie trail. It's in South Asia, and that's where he picked up his victims. He lured them in. He kind of had a cult going for a while, and I'll get into that. It's actually kind of interesting. I haven't heard much about him, but I watched the entire series this past week on Netflix called The Serpent. That series follows pretty closely to the story that's told in the book called On the Trail of the Serpent by Richard Neville and Julie Clark, who they themselves actually interviewed him and stayed with him for a while, so they knew quite a bit about him. And the Serpent, the show on Netflix that was based on the book, is closely to what actually happened. Obviously, it's dramatized and it's acted out, and people weren't really there for certain conversations. But for the most part, according to the people that were there, like the Dutch diplomat, which I'll talk about too, he said it's pretty spot on. So I suggest it. It is an interesting show. It's like 8 episodes, so it's a little bit longer, but it'll lure you in just like he does. So it's a good watch. I think it came out last year on Netflix, so it's a pretty interesting watch. But to start off, so I'm going to butcher names ahead, just letting you know, because this is obviously not names I'm not familiar with, but I'm going to do my best, and I'm going to try to say them with confidence, so you can't tell either way. But his name at birth was Hachan Bohani Gumak Charles Sobhraj. Long name, but he went by Charles Sobhraj. He was born in Saigon, and he was born to an unwed Vietnamese mother and an Indian father who soon deserted the family, so he was left with his mother, and she kind of blamed him for his father leaving. So right off the bat, he started off with a lot of hatred and not a lot of love. So she married a French lieutenant stationed in Indochina, and he wasn't given as much attention as the couple's later children in life. So that also caused him to act out quite a bit, and he started a life of crime pretty early because of this, because he wanted to travel and he didn't like staying where they were forced to. They were going back and forth between France and Southern Asia, and he didn't like that. So he wanted to travel and do his own thing. And because he didn't have money to do that, he started robbing people at a young age. So he first was arrested when he was 19 in 1963, and he was convicted of burglary. While he was in prison, he met a wealthy prison volunteer whose name was Felix Descog, I believe. He actually, once Charles was released, he gave him a place to stay. While he was staying with Felix, he was able to make connections with all of Felix's rich friends and live this lifestyle that he hadn't gotten before. And when he got a glimpse into this lifestyle, this is kind of where he decided this is what he wanted forever, but he didn't have any money, so he needed to find a way to have this lifestyle forever. So that made him rob more. So he was also very connected not only to these new friends that he was meeting through Felix, but also to the underground criminal world of Paris and South Asia, because he had already started a life of crime. So he kind of had connections on both sides. So people called him a social class chameleon because he could basically manipulate and lure you in on both sides of it, whether you're rich, poor, whatever. He could make you feel like you had a connection with him and you should trust him. He was married in 1970 to a young Parisian woman named Chantal Copenon. She soon became pregnant, and they traveled to Asia, and that's where he started doing more crime. He had to basically now support his new family, so he started robbing tourists off the bat and traveling under their stolen passports. At first, it was just robbing them of their identities and their money, and then it escalates over time, as we've seen. So he also begins stealing cars and smuggling jewels, and also attempts armed robbery. And in 1973, he was arrested again after attempting armed robbery at a jewelry store in Hotel Ashaka. There, after being arrested here, he escaped, and he ran back to his wife Chantel, and they fled to Kabul, where he was soon arrested again for doing more robberies, or attempting to do more robberies, and he was able to escape again. The reason that he was able to escape from prison as many times as he did was because he would fake illnesses. There was times that he would basically be vomiting fake blood. He would claim to have appendicitis. He did that a few times. And then he would end up going to the hospital, where he would only be guarded by one guard standing at the hospital door. This one instance where he had appendicitis, he ended up drugging the guard at the hospital that was standing in front of his door, and he just walked out once the guard fell asleep. So how he drugged him was probably slipping something in his drink, which just shows you how much they trusted him, that he was around their drinks. After this, his wife ends up leaving him, and she makes her way back to Paris to be with her family and to raise their daughter. He spent a few years on the run, traveling through Eastern Europe and the Middle East. At this time, he meets up with his half-brother, Andre, and together they start doing more crime to get more money. And they actually both get caught and were both sent to jail. While in jail around 1975, not 1975. While he was in jail with his brother, he actually switched identities with his brother and left his brother in jail to rot, basically, and got out on his own to hit the hippie trail again. So he doesn't really have any concern for anyone else. His wife leaves him, takes his kid, and he's back doing what he wants to do to live up to this lifestyle that he's been kind of addicted to at this point. In 1975, he committed his first murder with the man that he met along the way named Ajay Chowdhury. Their first victim together was an American tourist named Teresa Knowlton, and she was from Seattle. She was found in a tidal pool in the Gulf of Thailand, drowned. She was found in her bathing suit, which is why in Thailand he was known as the bikini killer. Once he was on the run again, he needed to finance this lifestyle for himself. He became known as this gem smuggler, thief guy, but they didn't know him as a smuggler. They saw him as a gem dealer, and he would get tourists that he met along the way to help him smuggle these gems. And that's where he met Marie Andre Leclerc. She was from Quebec, Canada, and she was also a traveler, and she fell for him pretty quickly. She becomes one of his most devoted followers. She stays with him pretty much, and as long as his criminal career goes. She turned a blind eye to his crimes and he wasn't loyal to her. Like, he still had his other women, but she was loyal to him, and she went wherever he went. She was head over heels for him. So she kind of turned a blind eye to all the stuff that went on. Some people, and I'll kind of get into this later, some people said that she was his partner, and other people say that she was under his spell and that he was abusive to her, and so she did it because she was scared that he would kill her. In the series, they kind of show both sides of that, so it's kind of unclear. At first, it seems like she's just in love, and then later it seems like she's being very controlled by him. So there's two sides of it. So, like I mentioned, his first victim was from America, and from Seattle specifically, and she was burned like his other victims, but she was later determined to be drowned first. Another victim by the name of Jenny Bolivar was found drowned in a tidal pool in the Gulf of Thailand as well. she was wearing a bikini as well. Months later, it was revealed that they were actually both killed by drowning. The next victim was a man named Vitaly Hakim. His body was burned and found on the road to the Pattaya resort where Sobhraj was staying with his clan of hippie trail tourists at the time. So that body was found close by to where they were staying, but he still wasn't questioned for it. Later, two Dutch students, Henk Bintenage and his fiancée Cornelia Hemker, she was 25, he was 29, they were invited to Thailand after meeting Sobhraj in Hong Kong. Just as he had with his past victims, he poisoned them and then nurtured them to get their health back, and through this gain their obedience. He would make them think that they were sick or that they had been food poisoned, whatever. They were throwing up, they would get fevers, and then he would be there to help them, basically give them a place to stay as they were going through this, and give them quote unquote medicine to make them feel better, but really the medicine was making them more sick. But during this time, they thought he was helping them, so they learned to trust him more, all for him to just end up killing them and stealing their identities. So also during this time, he was visited by Hakim's French girlfriend, Charmaine Carrao, and she had shown up to look for her boyfriend that he had killed previously, and Charles Sobhraj got paranoid about this, and he killed her as well. She was found strangled and burned on December 16th, 1975. This was all happening in the span of about a year, a little over a year. So this was a very busy year for them, because he goes from all of these victims stealing all these passports. You would think that it means that he's getting nervous or that he feels like he's got to be on the run, but he stays very cool, calm, and collected. It's just all of this happens in a very short amount of time. On December 18th, the day the bodies Batanaj and Hemker were identified, those were the two Dutch students. Sobhraj and Leclerc entered Nepal using those couples' passports. There they met on December 21st to 22nd and murdered Canadian Laurent Amard Carriere, and she was 26, and also they murdered Connie Bronzik, who was 29. Those two victims, they also stole their identity as they were traveling through. From here, they returned back to Thailand, once again using those victims' passports. So it's kind of, how was he getting around? It was the passports primarily, and also he had connections to the policeman from his time that he was in jail. Also, he was a very manipulative guy who made you feel comfortable. He made you feel like you were friends. So it was kind of easier for him to get through, with the passports he had and whatever, because he was getting pretty well known at this point. He even would he was kind of audacious too. At one point, he even went to the police and gave them passports that had been reported stolen or missing, when he had those passports the whole time and was using them himself. So he just went and turned them over to the police. So the police were like, oh, he's this great guy. So he's just really sneaky and really audacious about how he just kind of thinks that he's better than everyone else and smarter than everyone else. There were other times where he would, like I mentioned, he would cause people to get really sick, throw up, and have fevers and all this stuff. And then he would nurse them back to health. And that's another way that he just kind of, here you are sick and hanging on for life, and you think this man's helping you, and the medicine he's giving you is just making you worse. So he was just a very charming guy. People compared him a lot to Ted Bundy too, how he was very charming and lured a lot of people in that way and made himself seem very trusting. Plus, he had this lavish lifestyle. If you're on the hippie trail, you're already looking for something new, and here he comes with this shelter, this place to stay. They're partying every night. They're doing all types of drugs. It seems like a fun time. So you're going with this man. He also has his girlfriend with him too. So you think you can trust these people. So in the spring of 1976, they returned to Bangkok, and during this time, the authorities were on his trail, and by this time he had killed even more people. And so they tried to bring him in, and they did bring him in. They arrested him for questioning for these people that were going missing. But after questioning, they decided to let him go because apparently they didn't have enough to hold him. It was also said that the Thai authorities did this because they were worried about how a trial about a murderer that was murdering tourists would affect tourism in the country. So they didn't want to keep him because they didn't want the media to get a hold of it and damage tourism in the country since they needed it, which is terrible because if you're telling people, oh yeah, it's still safe here to come, and there's literally a murderer specifically targeting tourists, it's pretty bad. So after this, Leclerc and his trusted sidekick, AJ, ended up in Malaysia. And after this was the last time that AJ was seen. It was believed that Charles probably killed him because he was getting paranoid about the crimes that they had done in the past, that thinking that he would crack under pressure, thinking that he would, that someone would recognize him, that he couldn't travel willingly with AJ by his side anymore. Either way, he ends up killing AJ because he's never seen again after this. In the show, they kind of make it seem like the girlfriend Leclerc had more to do with it, like almost as if she just wanted to be alone with Sobhraj. So that could have also been why he decided to kill him. But after many, many years of AJ being his trusted sidekick and literally murdering people for him and with him without saying a thing, he killed him. After this, Leclerc and Sobhraj traveled to Switzerland, and then they went to India, continuing to pose as jewel traders. They killed again in Bombay, where Sobhraj was finally arrested in Delhi. He was caught because this is the kind of most audacious thing, he was caught in Delhi because he had attempted to trick about 60 French postgraduate students. He was getting them to take drugs, and he miscalculated the amount that he was giving these 60 students. And because of that, some of them were getting sick before others were getting sick. And they quickly figured out that he was the cause because he was the one giving everyone the drugs. And they called the authorities, and they also held him down while the authorities came to get him. So he was detained, and then he went to jail at the Tahir jail in Delhi. Here, this jail, normally you would think that in jail it wouldn't be a great time, but during the trial to go to jail, he really made a show of it. He was basically all over the media in that area and in other countries as well, because he was suspected in other countries, but he really loved the attention that he was getting from the media, and so he did all kinds of things. He went on a hunger strike, he hired and fired his legal team, and put on a whole show, basically. And he was finally sentenced to 12 years for attempted robbery, and his girlfriend Leclerc was also sentenced, but she actually ended up leaving on parole because she got diagnosed with ovarian cancer. So she was able to go back to Quebec, Canada, where she had come from, and she later died at age 38 from ovarian cancer. But Sobhraj at this time is in jail. He was in jail for 12 years, and while he was in prison, he kind of does this thing that's really smart when you think about it, but you don't want to give him any credit. But while in prison for 12 years, he would bribe guards with gemstones that he had collected during his time. And because of this, he lived a very luxurious life in jail. He had his own TV. He would throw parties for the guards and the inmates. He every night had the best dinners because of how he was bribing the guards. So his stay for 10 years was actually a pretty chill stay, and he didn't mind it. He was able to manipulate tons of people that he hadn't had the chance to before, so it was kind of just wasn't really like staying in jail. After 10 years of living this really nice prison sentence, he started coming up with a plan because he was still being investigated for murders throughout Thailand. And the man that was investigating him the most was the Dutch embassy diplomat named Herman. I'm going to mess this up. Herman Nippenberg. Is Jenny here? She's going to. Herman Nippenberg. And so he was the one that was investigating the murders of the two Dutch backpackers. He suspected Sobhraj, even though he didn't know his real name at the time, because obviously he's using the passports from all his past victims, so it's hard to track him down with that too. So Nippenberg started to build a case against him, and he got help from Sobhraj's neighbor at the time as well. So he got permission from the police to conduct his own search in Sobhraj's apartment, and that's where he found a lot of evidence that led him to the victims that were going missing. And he found like licenses, passports, all these things that linked him to the missing people. And he also found medicine that would cause people to get very sick, so that linked to him as well. But he couldn't get to Sobhraj this time because he's doing time in Delhi for drugging those French students. So he had to basically just hold out and build his case. So back in Delhi, Sobhraj comes up with this plan, knowing that they're building a case for him in Thailand. He decides that he needs to escape prison. And he does this in a funny way by for himself in his prison and drugging all of the people that came, all the inmates. He basically put I don't know the medical name for it, but it was like sleeping pills. He put it in the food, in the drinks, and he was able to get the guards and the other inmates to fall asleep, and he basically just walked right out the door of jail. He was on the run, I guess if you can call it that, because he walked right out, but he was on the run for 22 days and was recaught in Gao and was sentenced to 10 more years in prison, in the Delhi prison. And this was his plan all along, because he wouldn't be released until 1998. And this also meant that his 20-year arrest warrant that was issued by the Thailand authorities would reach its statute of limitations and expire. So he wouldn't be able to be charged for any of the crimes he had done in Thailand once he was released. It's actually pretty smart when you think about it. He escaped so that he could go back to the prison he already was enjoying his time at, didn't spend more time there, and get out of being arrested in Thailand. He knew that if he was arrested in Thailand for the murders, that he would probably serve life or be sentenced to life. So he came up with that plan, which is pretty smart actually. But so once he was released from the Tihar jail in Delhi, he moved back to Paris, where he basically became a celebrity for a while. Since his trial had been so public and the media was all over it, Paris, basically the media ate it up, and he started doing kind of like a press tour throughout Paris. He got to enjoy a comfortable retirement. He hired an agent and charged thousands of dollars for interviews and photographs, and upwards of $15 million for a movie deal based on his life. Meanwhile, the families of the victims and investigators, such as Nippenberg, basically got to see no justice, and they just had to sit and watch this man become a celebrity and get all this glory for getting away with it while they got nothing. Then on September 17th, 2003, Sobhraj unexpectedly showed up in Kathmandu and was spotted by a journalist who reported him to the authorities. He was then arrested 2 days later by the Nepalese police in a casino of the Yak and Yeti Hotel. And then on August 20th in Kathmandu, the Kathmandu District Court sentenced him to life imprisonment for the 1975 murders of Bronzik and Carrier, the two Dutch students. Most of the evidence coming from all the documents that Nippenberg had put together with Interpol. So he was finally sentenced to life from there. Why he went back to Thailand, he never really explained that. If it was that he was bored of being retired and enjoying his retirement in Paris, or why he even would risk it, who knows. But he went back, and that's what ultimately got him arrested anyway. He was actually later engaged while in jail to a Nepali woman named Nahiti Biswas. They were married on October 9th, 2008. And he's still in jail today. His health hasn't been great, though. At this point, he's 78 or 79, and he's had 2 heart attacks so far. But if you interview him, the interviews that you see of him are quite chilling. He's very confident in what he did. In his mind, he says that he can justify the murders. He believes that he never killed any good people. So that's kind of like where he's justified it in his head, but I'm not really sure how bad they could have been. They were just backpacking through the hippie trail. So I don't know, maybe he saw something different, but in his mind, all of his killings were justified. Sorry, my dog is getting in my face. But yeah, so that's the story of Charles Sobhraj and the serpent, as he's also called, the bikini killer also. Does anyone want to come up? If anyone's seen the show, the series, it's a good one to watch, so I definitely recommend it. And it's not one that you normally hear about, at least not in the U.S. Maybe it's because we have so many of our own serial killers that we don't talk about the ones from all around the country as much, but he's definitely an interesting one because it's almost like it reminded me a lot of the Tinder swindler, where the Tinder swindler like obviously didn't kill people as far as we know. He didn't kill anybody, but this guy kind of had this life of luxury, and he became addicted to this life of luxury. And it wasn't that he was killing because he had a thirst for blood or that he needed, that he was, I mean, I guess he was a little damaged from childhood, but it was more so like he was doing it to keep appearances and to keep his life going. So it's a little different than it would be like a killer like Ed Kemper that feels the need to kill or, has this like thirst for blood. It's this guy is just doing it because to him, these people were in his way. Like he wants to travel, he wants to do his thing, he wants to live his expensive life, and he needs new identities to do it. So they're in the way. And it's kind of wild. He was convicted of the 2 murders. It's confirmed that he at least murdered 12 people, but in interviews, he's joked about killing upwards of 100 people. So it's who knows how many people he killed along the way, especially since he was taking people off the hippie trail who were traveling. And, once you go missing in a country that you're not from, it's very difficult to figure out what happened to you. So there could have been many, many more. He's obviously never listed all of them. It's just that he's joked about killing upwards of 100. So he's also very smug about the whole thing. He doesn't really seem to have any care for it. And the fact that he killed his best friend, the one that was doing all these murders for him and with him, also shows he really didn't care much. Leclerc, his girlfriend at the time, in the show, they show it as like they kind of had this big breakup scene in jail. Who knows if that actually went down, if they were even able to talk to each other once they were both arrested. But there is this scene where she basically realizes that he doesn't care about her or anyone, and that she's basically in jail because of him, and it's very dramatic. But I don't know if that's exactly how it went down. But she got, didn't get away scotch-free. She did get arrested for helping him and working with him, but she ended up going back to Canada to die. So that part's kind of sad because who knows if it was a control thing or if she was helping along, and only really she would know. And she did testify against him when he went to trial for poisoning the French students. So it's not like she was loyal to the end or anything. But yeah, so it's an interesting story. Oh yeah, sorry, I'm just now reading the chat. Oh, thank you, Judy. Yeah, and you mean in the show? They said he was caught in Mumbai. Yeah, he was caught in Goa, and that's your home state. Yeah, definitely. If you see the interviews, there's a couple of clips of them on YouTube, that interviews that he did while he was doing like his celebrity tour in Paris. And they asked him point blank, like, did you kill anyone? And he was like, well, the court said I didn't. And the interviewer's like, okay, but did you? That's not what I asked. Like, did you kill anyone? And he's like, no, the court's determined I didn't do it. So he's just like very nonchalant about the whole thing, and it's really creepy to watch him. And the actor that plays him does a really good job. Like they look a lot alike, and yeah, it's a great little series. I can't believe it took me this long to watch it, but I think I just was waiting for like I knew I wanted to do a room on it, so I was waiting for a time that I could like really focus on it. But it's good, and they actually do a really good job too of showing the Dutch diplomat, like because he was a diplomat and not authorities, like he wasn't a police officer or a detective. They really gave him a hard time. Like he caught on to the fact that people were going missing, that tourists were going missing, and it was the Dutch students that were killed that first caught him onto it. If he hadn't pursued that, then Charles could have gone on to kill and maybe would have never been caught. It was this diplomat that really didn't need to, but he knew that people were going missing, especially these two students, and he's the one that fought to investigate. He had to get the authorities' permission to even go into his apartment and search for clues, which he got a ton of, and that really helped build the case. So if he hadn't done that, it's like another one of those. It was the one I covered a couple weeks ago that like there was one guy that kept going back to the case. Oh, the Green River Killer. It's like these characters that come about that you need for them to be captured at all. It's really impressive that they choose to stick with it, and it's really cool to see. And the Newtonberg guy was the one that said that the show was pretty much spot on. He said it was almost scary how much of it seemed real when he was rewatching it. So he was there, so I'll take his word for at least his part of it. What he wasn't there for, obviously, the Charles part, but Charles himself never got to see the show, but people have said that he would love it. As of yet, he hasn't seen it, but he really loved just knowing that his name was out there, knowing people were talking about him and all the stuff that he got away with originally. He really enjoyed all of that, all the love, all the everything, and that's what he used to his advantage. I feel like he loved to manipulate people, and he loved to gain control of people, and so to have people so fascinated by him, he just ate that up. And yeah, it's really sad because I've never been over to that area, which is why obviously I was having such a hard time with the names. But like people go there almost like as a backpacking trip. They go there to explore and have fun and like take a year off and do that whole thing. And so it also puts a damper on that, especially if you're someone that enjoys to travel, to have this guy going around taking passports just to live this life of crime. So yeah, he's a pretty shitty guy. Jetty's coming up to tell me I pronounced all the Hi, Jenny.
Hi. No, I'm not going to tell you about that because I have no idea. I'm Swedish, not Dutch. You did wonderful. I'm just going to say that. I'm wondering, like, how blind are these people? If you stole somebody else's passport, you can't look anything like them. How did he pull that off?
Yeah, it was the pictures. Like he would take the pictures off and put his picture on the passport. I'm not sure exactly how he was able to do it so that they believed it, but he would use his own picture. That's how he was able to get away with it.
We also have to keep in mind the technology at the time.
Right.
It wasn't very advanced, and they used something called traveler's checks, which obviously is not a thing anymore. So it was very easy to forge those as well. And so I'm from Goa, where he was actually caught in the end, and there's a restaurant. The restaurant that he was caught in actually has a statue of him in ropes and handcuffs. Oh. I'll share a picture if I can find it. It's actually very interesting. So Goa, the state where I'm from, is anyway known as a very party destination. So a lot of local tourists and a lot of foreign tourists come over to, it's like the Ibiza of India, I guess. It's not a really nice thing to say because as a local, it's very offensive. But anyway, so that's how people see it. It's a party, it's got beaches, cheap alcohol. And it's also known for like techno music. So we used to get a lot of hippies back in the day. And the place where he was caught was a well-known restaurant that catered to hippies. Mm-hmm. And I can quickly read you the cop's point of view, the Goan cop that caught him. Do you want me to read that out to you?
Yeah.
It's quite interesting. So he says, Mr. Zende, that was his name. He says it was 10:30 p.m. and I noticed that a car had pulled up and two men got out. What made me suspicious was that it was late at night, but they were still wearing sun hats. They sat at a table and were drinking beer, and I recognized one of them as Sobhraj, even though he had a beard and looked very different from the last time I saw him. It was his chilling, piercing eyes that convinced me it was him. I got so excited that I started trembling, but I managed to compose myself and walk slowly towards him, grabbed him from behind, turned him around, and said, "Hello, Charles. How are you?" And then they put him into a car for an 11-hour journey back to Mumbai, where he was then deported to Delhi again. So yeah, that was I saw that you were talking about him, and I was so excited because you don't have these really big things happening in a small state like Goa, and the fact that such a big serial killer was caught there was weird to say exciting, but yeah, it's exciting.
Yeah. No, it makes sense though. Like, especially if there's nothing really going on, but it all of a sudden this big event, especially since he wasn't just known there, he was known in many countries because he was traveling back and forth. Like, to have him caught there kind of does give your a little bit of clout there.
Also because Goa was so it's always been known as one of those really tourist destinations where it attracts a lot of foreign tourists, and by foreign tourists I mean specifically Western tourists. So I was actually shocked that in the show they never talked about it at all. They don't even mention it. They say that he was caught in Mumbai, but that was completely false, and it made more sense for him to get caught in a place like Goa back in the day, because it was just drugs and booze and people really, yeah, it was a scene.
So do you think that he went back to that area to start doing the same thing he was doing before, to get tourists and to start, because it seems like while he was in Paris, he was doing okay. Like, he was getting these interviews. Maybe those slowed down and he felt like he had to go back onto the hippie trail and kind of start finding tourists again.
Yeah, Goa is like a cesspool of victims. He could easily. It's like a really big. If you want to start killing random people who have traveled miles away from their homes, Goa is the place that you would start, and then make your way to Bali and the other East Asian countries, because that's what attracts a lot of foreign tourists who have a lot of money. So it made sense that he would go back there. It's I actually found out Okukeros is the name of the restaurant. I still can't believe it because it's a very family restaurant now. People go there with their families all the time with little children, and you've got a statue of the serial killer over there.
Why would they make a statue of him and not like I guess because he was caught right there, but it's also, the statue of he probably ate that up too. Like, he probably loved that they have a statue of him.
Yeah, I was thinking maybe the cop, not the serial killer.
Right. Like, I mean, that just shows how kind of our focus shifts, and like, it's so much more about the bad guys sometimes, and that kind of, that's interesting that there's a statue. I didn't even read about that, so that's wild.
I just updated it as my PTR.
Oh wow. He's just sitting there.
Yeah, and they have like a little table with all the information about him and everything. It's like a heritage site now, so it's something that will go down in history as, the serial killer was caught in Goa.
Well, a lot of people, that's why he was getting interviewed, because they really, he was getting away with it all, and he was coming up with these plans. It just seems so interesting. Maybe you might know a bit, in that area, is it common for when you're in jail, you can bribe, guards?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, really?
100%.
Oh.
Especially back in the day, with security, and people are really poor, so they're happy to make extra cash on the side. So it's just it's normal.
Yeah, because that part, I was like, why is he getting parties in jail? And that just doesn't seem. But I guess, yeah, if he had rubies and he had things that he could bribe them with, it makes sense. But that's a long time. He was there for 20 years, so it's a long time to keep bribing people. He must have had a lot stowed away, or maybe just connections that had more money.
Yeah. I don't know if you mentioned that I didn't actually check Google, but there's a part in the show where he keeps he has a hostage, a French man who manages to escape with the help of the neighbors.
Yes, Dominic.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I did. I had like his name and a bunch of stars next to it, and I forgot why I wrote that down. But you're right. There was a part about that in the series as well. He escaped by getting the help from neighbors, and then that same couple, I forget their name right now, but that same couple helped the diplomat to build the case against him. And that guy, Dominic, he's still alive and he's now living out his life, but it's agreed that he still has nightmares about his time there. And I believe Sobhraj tried to get the neighbors to tell him where Dominic was. Yeah.
Yes. He did that. He suspected the neighbors, and that's why he takes the wife home as well, and then they get really scared and they come back, and then she's okay.
So what it was like to be neighbors to this guy, watching these people go in and out of this house and picking up on the fact that something was, I mean, Dominic went to them for help, but like, I wonder if they picked up on it before, or if they were just kind of like, stay out of it until someone came for help, and then they had to, and they felt they should help. But yeah, because you had to how do you not notice that this place is always buzzing, there's always parties, and there's always random people, and it seems that some of them aren't leaving. Like, I don't know how you would even keep track, actually, so maybe they didn't see it, but yeah, just to be an outsider and he was building basically a cult. He had a cult for some time there that I guess, like, I don't know if it checks all the boxes for a cult, but it was just a group of people that, like, they had shelter with him, they trusted him, he was giving them drugs, he was giving them food. It was like, that's how he built that, and they were basically worshiping him, which he just ate up. So
Excuse me?
Yeah.
Ajmal bro, talk.
Yeah, free bro. Oh, okay. He's asking what's going on here. What's the content going on here?
Okay. We're talking. Do you know about this case?
Yeah, we heard it. Yeah, we also watched the news.
So, you know about the case with Charles Sobhraj?
Not really, but know somewhat.
Did you have a question or a comment about the case?
No, I don't know about the case very well, but I know little.
Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and move you down just because I don't think you have a. Sorry, I don't think, maybe you came up thinking we were just hanging. Sorry. But yeah, okay. I don't know. Was I in the middle? Oh, I did want to mention too. So his daughter that he had with his first wife, she actually grew up to have quite an interesting job. She is now she has a classified job, but she works for the U.S. government, specializing in counterterrorism and homeland security. So that's kind of cool because, like, I think that I wonder if her father, being who he was, had any impact on what she chose to do with her life. But it's really cool that she's now working for counterterrorism. Her name is Usha, and she's now in the U.S. I just thought that was cool. I wanted to point that out. So, oops, sorry. Who was that? Did you have something to say?
Oh no, I just wanted to say, can you imagine the strain of working on a case like this must have taken on Kippen's relationship?
Oh, that was another point. Did you see in the show how he and his wife, how that dynamic was? Yeah. She said that it wasn't like that. That was the one thing that they kind of got off. She said that she was very, like, they were like a detective couple together, and the show made it seem like she didn't want him to do it, and she was kind of a nagging wife. That was the only part that she said was off.
Yeah, that makes sense. Just to create more drama. But yeah, the whole case was so interesting. I hadn't even heard about him until the show came out, and then I Googled, and then I was like, oh my god, wait, that's the guy whose statue is at the restaurant that we go to eat.
That's so weird. I don't think that we have any statues of serial killers in the States, but, like, that's such an odd way. I mean, I guess, yeah, because it happened there. it's kind of cool to have it there so that when you do go to that restaurant. Did the restaurant get like more popular after?
It did. It's one of the most popular places to eat in Goa whenever you go. But now it's a complete tourist place. Locals don't go there. It's just also because of after the serpent came out, it got a lot more attention.
Mm-hmm.
So people started Googling and they found out, oh hey, there's a statue of this guy. Let's go see it.
Wow. That's kind of cool. But yeah, does anyone? How do you feel about his accomplice? Do you feel like she was a partner, or do you think that she was being controlled by him?
I think a little bit of both. I think it may have started off as she really loved him and she just was naive and she didn't want to see the ugly bits, and then she just got on board, because how are you with someone for so long and you don't understand? Unless he really brainwashed her, you know. But then I don't know, some part of me truly believed that she knew what she was doing or who she was with. I don't know, obviously we don't know his perspective or like her perspective, but in the show they show how she was scarred in the beginning and then she completely surrenders herself to him, so she gets completely like 100% on board. The scene where she's sleeping on bed and she kind of expects him to suffocate her, but he doesn't, and then she comes back a changed woman according to the neighbors. Yeah,
so it's like almost like at some point you realize this is my life now and I kind of have to do what he says.
And no, I think it was more like, oh, he had the chance to kill me and he didn't. I'm sure he really loves me, so why am I doubting him? That's how I saw it.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's a good point. I mean, they did a good job at like showing that internal struggle for her. It did seem like at one point she didn't want to drug them, and then at other points she was like, okay, I'm going to help, and this is what it is. But and then the dynamic between her and AJ, his little right hand man, seemed to have a lot of tension too.
Did you say that he killed his partner? Did he kill Ajay? Because I read that he disappeared and no one's ever seen him since. So it's just a theory that he killed him, but there's no proof.
Yeah, there's no proof that he killed Ajay, but it's believed that he did. He never said that he did, but he like disappeared after they ended up in Malaysia. So that's kind of the idea behind it, because he was just kind of killing people that got in his way, and when he got to Malaysia, he also was getting a lot more paranoid about them and Ajay kind of being with them brought attention to them too, because his name was also out there. So I think it was him just trying to like lighten his pack so that they wouldn't be caught roaming about and stuff. It's weird. He goes through these different phases where he's out in the open, but his partners can't be. And so it's like he thinks that he'll get away with it. He thinks that no one's going to turn him in, but it's everyone that's working with him can't. So that's just his audacity, really. But
but that's so typical of serial killers, isn't it? They trust really, truly no one but themselves. And I guess if I were a serial killer, I would do the same thing. Trust no one but myself.
Right. And it's also interesting too that he, like, the escaping jail and stuff, it's interesting how he put that whole thing together, to escape, to get arrested all over again just for 10 more years to be able to live out that statute of limitations on his warrant in Thailand. Like, that's really smart. And so it's not that he's not smart. He's definitely smart, manipulative. He's a scary person overall, because it's like, who knows? He could really talk himself out of a lot of stuff.
Interesting. He was extremely charming. He had a way with words, really. You know what I think is really weird? That he went back to Nepal knowing full well he was going to get arrested.
Yeah, strange.
I think some serial killers, they come to a point where nothing satisfies them anymore, and then he went back and he tipped off the reporter. He did it on purpose. Like, he stood in front of a mural or something that said Nepal, and that's how the cops knew that he was there, because of the picture that was taken by the reporter.
So that's almost like when Ed Kemper just called in and like had them come pick him up, because he was just he basically set himself up. I wonder if he just got tired of it, or if he just wanted to be finally recognized for all he had gotten away with. Probably.
Yeah, I think that was that. I think it's the narcissism that he really, really wanted the attention again. I cannot imagine knowing about this show that exists about him. Must really give him a hard on or something.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, because he had that movie deal ready to go. That was a $15 million movie deal. So the show is probably, because he looks great in the show. Like,
oh yeah.
At the end, but you're still like, wow, this guy's really charming, even
right.
at the very end. So
why did they pick such attractive actors to like portray serial killers? Like, what is up with that? What is up with that?
I think it's so that we understand a little bit better about how charming they were, but at the time it's like frustrating because at some point you're like, oh, okay, I could get into that life, and then I'm like, oh wait, he's murdering people. Like,
yeah, I think they wanted us to be Mariander.
Yeah,
I think they wanted us to be her. Maybe, I don't know. I don't know. It was just, the moment he came on screen, I'm just like, this guy is just way too good looking. I'm feeling very weird about this. I shouldn't like him.
But he also has at least the actor, he has such a moldable face where like there's time, like they did a good job at showing the times where he was stressed and the times where he was like, he really looks relaxed, and when he really looks like he's, because when he snaps on his girlfriend, he goes nuts, and you're like, oh yeah, he's crazy. Like, so that they did a good job about that.
I also really like how they've managed to take the picture that's in your PTR, the way they showed it in the TV show. I really like that. It's like the iconic Bonnie and Clyde duo kind of picture.
Yeah, they were kind of like a Bonnie and Clyde over there, because they weren't killing because they enjoyed killing. It was, and that's kind of how Bonnie and Clyde were too. They were robbing people and everything just to get by. So, but yeah, one thing that my comparison to the Tinder swindler makes sense, because even though he didn't kill, as far as we know, I just think that it reminded me a lot of him because of how he was stealing passports and identities and getting away with it just because he needed to keep up with this luxurious lifestyle that he had been obsessed with living.
Yeah. But that was about it. I actually think the whole Tinder swindler case is a little crazy because you talked about stranger danger right from the beginning, and I just feel like, I'm sorry, but the victims of this case, there were red flags, and I cannot believe they did what they did. So I have hot takes on that, which I probably shouldn't, I don't want to say right. I don't want to talk about it right now, but I just think the charming part makes sense to and also because they were swindling people to fit their particular lifestyle. But apart from that, I feel like Charles Sobraj's victims, I'm sorry for them, genuinely, they were just traveling, just wanted to explore, they wanted to be independent, and they just go and they trust someone to take them around, a local person who they see as a local person and then he just does what he did to them. It's awful. It's just awful. Oh God.
And I mean, it must have been it's tough too. You're already on this big adventure, and this guy comes along, super charming, that just offers you all these things, and that's something that you're not going to just say no to, especially after you're kind of running out of money, you're getting to the end. So I also understand that part of it. It's like you're looking for anyone that's willing to help, and you want to believe that there's good in people. That's kind of like what you're out there exploring, and you find this guy, and who you don't know about all the people that have gone missing so far with him. So you're jumping forward, and then that happens. It's like, it's mind fuck just to be in that situation already and be kind of helpless in that way. Yeah. So it's actually impressive that Dominic escaped at all. And
right. I was just going to ask you about that. I wonder what went through Charles Sobraj's mind to not kill Dominic, because he could have easily done that. I think it's probably because he really truly had nothing at the end, Dominic, nothing except his services, and he wanted just to keep a house help around or something. But oh my goodness, just making them even more sick. It was, oh God, I can't even imagine.
Yeah. It is violent sick too. He gives them stuff to throw up. It gives them diarrhea. It gives them a lot. And then they get a fever and they're suffering for days, and he's just giving them more quote medicine, and it's making them sicker. it was not a quick death. Like eventually, when the bodies are being found, they were found strangled, and then their bodies were burned after. But it was a long process to even kill them. So
yeah, he took his time.
Yeah, it's almost like he enjoyed that part of it and enjoyed the control that he had over them before they were finally dead. So, and it wasn't like he had I guess he did have a certain victim because it was people that were traveling, but it was men, women, like anything he needed to steal identities. So he would usually need a man, a woman, and then another guy for Ajay. So that was kind of just like a means to keep it going, which it just gives you chills because these poor people just thought that he was a nice guy helping them out. So be careful if you are backpacking through the hippie trail or any part of the world, really.
Yeah, you just need to be aware. I mean, of course, now with social media and things like that, it's so much more difficult, I guess, because people are constantly posting about their lives, they're constantly in touch with their families. It still happens, but so rarely. I was so grateful just for social media to exist. It's one of those pros.
You're right. Like now, if you're backpacking, you're like a blogger, whereas before you would just be, writing in journals. Now it's like people see you doing it a lot more.
And then suddenly, if you're someone that's posting every day, for example, and you suddenly don't do it for 2-3 days, that's automatically like red flags, and people are going to start looking for you.
Yeah.
At least it doesn't take time. It doesn't take 2-3 months for your parents to realize, oh shit, my daughter is missing. It's immediate.
Right. That's kind of how people caught on to Gabby Petito, was when she was and stuff. So yeah, it's people catch on to it quicker, which is good. It still seems like an interesting life. Like I love traveling, so I when I read about cases like this, I'm like, gosh, why? Why does this have to happen? Because it really just makes you double think everything, which is good, but also it kind of just puts a damper on it. But
you just need to be really careful. I'm currently living in Europe, and I still think like 200 times before I go out, before I travel by myself. Oh, why do men exist?
Right?
Just ruining everything. Because that's the number one reason. It's just because of safety, and it's everywhere I'm traveling, I'm reading about, oh, is this safe? Are there people, who can, kidnap you, rape you, whatever, just do something to you? And really scary to see people saying, oh, you don't stay at this hostel because I was harassed here. Don't stay over there because, these people are really weird. They stare at you. And you're just like scratching things off your list, and it makes it so much more difficult. Yeah. Sorry, I'm just really frustrated because it's summer and I'm trying to travel.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. I get that. Yeah, because you don't know like how much of it is, oh, well, it's a cheap night, but then you have to read the reviews and you're like, okay.
Maybe not.
So it's like you have to pay for a personal bodyguard the whole time.
Yeah, damn it, they found a camera in the Airbnb, can't book that.
Right. Never end. But yeah, so if anyone else wants to come up before we kind of wrap up for today, does anyone else find it strange that it seems like he had no problem causing harm to other people, but also he had no problem causing harm to himself when he was in jail, and gave him, in the show they show it as he almost pinches his stomach and gets appendicitis that way. I'm not sure if he got some kind of drug to make it seem like he had appendicitis, but either way, he faked his own illness and he was throwing up what they said was fake blood. I'm not sure how he did that, but anything to get out of jail at that point this is before he started killing, but that part was interesting. I didn't think that he would be so easily cause harm to himself like that, but I guess it makes sense because he had a plan and he had to stick to his plan. So, yeah, he's a wild character. Look up, research him. There's more stuff that I would also look into Dominic's story. I'm sorry I didn't take more notes on Dominic's side of it, but he does have an interesting story about how he was able to escape and the neighbors and stuff. So that's a whole episode in the series that's good to watch. And yeah, if anyone else has any other comments. The show that was based off him was called The Serpent, and then the book that the show was based off of was called The Trail of the Serpent, The Life of and it was written by Richard Neville and Julie Clark. So that's that's if you're interested in reading that too. But yeah, it's a good case to just get into. He jumps around so much, which is something that you don't see as much in other serial killers. He jumps from country to country and just keeps moving, and that's also why he was able to get away with it for so long. And that's why he's nicknamed the Serpent, because he was able to kind of sneak in and out of places and not be detected and get away from authorities. So yeah, sneaky guy and super full of himself. So it's good that he's in jail now, thankfully, because you wouldn't want that still around doing this stuff still. So for next week, so if you're new to these rooms, I do these rooms every Thursday at 1:30 Eastern Standard Time, and through the True Crime Talks Club up above me. So if you're not a member, make sure to follow the club. And Danielle here next to me is the founder of the club, so make sure to give her a follow too, because if I'm not in the room, she'll be in the rooms. There's rooms throughout the week with different hosts, and there's a trivia night. We do all different conversations. We do more like open forum conversations too. We do like almost like a book review of shows sometimes. We're currently watching The Deep, which is on Hulu, about Teal Swan, who could be a cult leader. Who knows? And that's The Deep is on Hulu now, and there's new episodes I think every week. So we've been kind of covering that through the club as well. So make sure to give it a follow if you want to come back and hang out with us. If you're interested in true crime, this is kind of the place to be for all of that stuff. Anything else, Danielle?
No, that's it. This was my first time hearing about this case, and I had not even watched the show. I didn't even know it was on Netflix.
Okay.
No, surprisingly.
Yeah.
I thought I caught everything, but I didn't.
Yeah, make sure to watch the show. It's good. I mean, it's not on it's been out for over a year now, so it might not be on the home screen, but if you look it up, it's there, and it's a good watch. It only takes like a couple. I got through it in like 2 nights. It was pretty locked in, so it's a good show to watch. But
yes, it's really good. I binge watched it in a day. Gives you the creeps.
Yeah. Oh, it does give you. Make sure to watch it like with a nightlight or something.
I know that's what Helen was saying. She was saying it was creepy. She couldn't watch it all. She had to stop. She needed a break.
Yeah, just get creepy. But it's a good one. I actually like when they do series like that. I really like the Manhunt series that they did too with the Unabomber, and then they did one about the Olympic bombings. I liked those when they kind of dramatize it. I know sometimes it's not exact, or that conversations happen that maybe didn't happen, but I like watching it play out as opposed to documentaries. Sometimes documentaries are still interesting, but I think that when they act it out, the timeline is easier to follow. So yeah, it was a good show to watch. But yeah, thanks guys. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
And that concludes our deep dive into the sinister world of Charles Sobhraj. It's truly a chilling story that will forever be etched in history. But before we wrap up, we have an update for you. In a surprising turn of events, Charles was released from prison on December the 23rd of 2020 due to his advanced age. This decision has sparked a wave of controversy and raised numerous questions about justice and the consequences of his actions. He has been deported from France and is now barred from entering Nepal for the next 10 years. It remains to be seen what the future holds for this notorious figure. Stay tuned for more updates on this captivating case. Thanks for joining us today, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more intriguing content. And if you're interested in hosting rooms in the club, remember to reach out and send us an email. And until next time, bye.